Hi, it's Diane. I'm back. It's been quite a while since I made a video, but I have been doing a little bit in my craft room again, slowly getting back into it. And I thought I should do some videos and kind of catch up on what I've been doing. I completed this junk journal the day before my husband passed away suddenly, and so obviously I didn't make a video of it. So I'll do that now, and then I'll proceed with some other videos as I feel up to it. Obviously this was made with a book about the opera, and I filled it with vintage ephemera and some fake vintage ephemera. Some of the pieces that I made a video about those pieces made to look old. The only thing I did to this beautiful cover was to put on some Scrabble tiles, spell out my name. It's got 3 signatures, and I attached this bead dangle that I made. And then on the back it has 2 eyelets to hold this piece of decorative elastic, which I got from Walmart. And I stitched it here, put it through the eyelets and stitched it, and it forms the closure. Now you can see here, these things are upside down. This should be the front inside cover of the book. But when I decoupaged my ephemera to the inside cover, I did it upside down. But I decided to just leave it that way. The book is for me. I'm not swapping it or sending it to anybody, so it's just for me. This is a piece that I made out of real sturdy manila with a stamp that I have. I believe it's a Prima stamp. And this is also a piece that I made just on coffee dyed paper with a stamp. And then this is made from a book page that was a very fragile. The page just fell apart if you touched it. So I decoupaged it to the back of a piece of decorative paper and made a bookmark out of it. And this is just coffee dyed index cards. Here's a page from the opera book, and I just made it into a tip-in. And this is from one of the inside pages of the book, copyright 1921, and it has the RCA Victor doggy there. Little piece of metal here. This is from Tsunami Rose. And a couple of banners that I made. This is a piece of the file folder, and I stamped on it. And then I stitched it to this piece of a pilot's logbook. That's not very vintage. I believe it's from the 1980s. And then I glued some trim to it. These are real vintage pieces. A Betty Crocker coupon here, and Garner's Truck Service green stamp folder. So I made this logbook into a pocket and tucked those in here. And then this is one of the pieces that I made, coffee dyed paper with a stamp on it. These are some stamps. Not postage stamps, but children's stamps that I think Lori Jagadish sent those to me in a swap. This is just a piece of scrapbook paper. This is vintage ledger paper that someone sent to me. There are vintage pieces in here, and I have received pieces from various people in swaps, and so I don't remember who sent what. But I love every vintage piece of paper that I have. I love them all. This has a foreign language on it, and I cannot remember who sent it to me. This is from the opera book, and this is a piece of grid paper, one of those pieces that I made with a stamp on it, and a banner and a piece of lace. I'm sorry, I can't get the whole book in here. I feel awkward doing this. It's been a while. A refund slip here. I don't even know where that came from. And here's a merchandise bag. And this is a little tag that I coffee dyed. And actually, I think Jill Robertson dyed that. She sent it to me, and it's got a Tim Holtz rub-on on it. And a little jewelry tag here. And another rub-on that says number 7. And I glued on some ribbon and rickrack. This is a vintage postcard from Athens, Pennsylvania, where I live. I found it at an antique store in a neighboring town. And here's a vintage postcard that I purchased at the Goodwill quite a while ago. And here's another rub-on. This is a vintage computation book. And I put a rub-on on it. Some of the green stamps and yellow stamps. There's one of the vintage Betty Crocker box tops, and this is a vintage tab card that I purchased a box of, and I inked it and stamped on it. And this is a little vintage playing card or Cracker Jack card and a little coupon thing. And this is something Lori Jagadish sent to me. And it was torn in two when I received it, and I just took a piece of scrapbook paper and stitched it onto it, and I can journal on that. There's a stamp there, coffee dyed paper, and it's got a doily, a couple of the little pieces that I made, and some stamps. This came from a vintage scrapbook, and I put it on some lined paper for journaling. And another vintage Betty Crocker coupon. Journaling on the back. A vintage card. What do you call them? Flashcards. There's a piece that I made. There's a vintage children's card. And this came with my, I think this was in the package of S&H green stamps. Or, no, this was in the package of the Betty Crocker coupons that I got at the antique store. It's backed with a piece of the pilot logbook. This is from ledger paper that came from Towanda, Pennsylvania office in the 1930s. This is a paper doll. Oh, there's a rub-on the back of that. This is a paper doll, jointed doll that I purchased at an antique store, secondhand shop. And I just thought she was really cute. So I just put her in this pocket. This is actually a piece of leather that came off of one of my husband's boating hats. He used to like to canoe. And I'm glad I put this in here. The hat fell apart. It had a huge tear in it. And rather than throw the whole thing away, I took this piece of leather off because I thought it would be a perfect tab. And I put it in this book. And then the day after I finished making this book, he died. So I'm really glad that I included this tab in this book. I still can't believe I have to say that. It's been 5 months. Another piece of paper from that same Towanda office. And this, I think, I'm going to say Lori Jagadish. I'm not positive, but I think she sent this to me with some vintage ephemera. And there's another piece of that fragile book page that I decoupaged onto this tag that I copy dyed. Computation paper with a tab on it, a rub-on. Oh, actually, no, this is printed on it. This computation book was numbered. The other side of the merchandise bag, I glued some trim to it and put a vintage bingo card that Jill Robertson sent me. I love those bingo cards, Jill. And this is one of the pieces that I made with stamps and inking. This is a page from the opera book. Some more pieces that I made. These are some vintage children's playing cards that I stitched together and then stitched to this coffee dyed page. This is a tag that I made from manila cardstock. It's coffee dyed and inked and stamped. And then I had found some vintage greeting cards. There's lots of journaling room on that. And S&H green stamps. This one doesn't have any stamps in it, so there's journaling room in that. Scrapbook paper with some pieces of trim stitched to it. A little calendar that I stamped and glued on. From a vintage magazine. A piece of crocheted trim as a tab. Betty Crocker coupon. And rub-on. This is nice vintage ledger paper too that someone sent me. Stamp there. This is from Lackawanna Railroad Company. I got a whole packet of paper and tissue that they printed on and wrote on from this railroad company. So there's a piece of that. This is a little empty notebook cover that my Betty Crocker coupons were tucked into and put in a baggie. Excuse me, and that's how they were packaged when I purchased them. So I just added some notebook paper, vintage composition book paper. This 1946 calendar was taped to the inside of this just like this, with this brown paper on it. So I didn't touch it, I just left it the way it was. And I glued one of the Betty Crocker coupons to the back. From a vintage magazine, some washi tape. I purchased this Western Railway Company logbook at a flea market, so I included a page of that. It's well, one of the pages has a date, and it's not on this side, so I can't tell you what year it was, but it's old. And from a vintage magazine on a coffee dyed doily, and this is from Tsunami Rose, printable. This is a vintage little bag that someone sent me, and I'm not sure who it was, but I kept it, I liked it, and I didn't want to put it in a journal I was giving away, so I included it in this, and I cut this piece of manila file folder to fit in there, put a rub on, and this tab came off a bag of potatoes. Russet Burbank. And this is a vintage game piece. A vintage current catalog recipe card, and a little piece that I made from the 1930s ledger paper. This is coffee dyed paper, the center of the signature, and it's got some seam binding here and a banner that I made, a rub-on here. This is from a little vintage sketchbook, and I put these rub-ons here that say, oh, they're stickers, tomorrow, yesterday, and forever. I have vintage photographs, but they're on heavy cabinet cards, so I made a copy of that one and backed it with coffee dyed paper. And this was tucked into, I think it was in the Betty Crocker coupons, and it is a pencil drawing that someone made. It says, how to have fun bumming it. And there's a briefcase or suitcase that someone cut out of a magazine and attached to his hand. And it says Ye Old Fishing Hole there. I just thought it was adorable, so I had to keep it, tucked it right in there. The Morton Salt Girl from an old magazine. And this is one of the opera book pages. This is from scrapbook paper, Betty Crocker coupon, the tag that I made, and one of the little vintage note cards with a cute little bird on it. Oh dear, I'm going to run out of time. I'm going to do this in two parts, I guess.